What's going on, guys? As promised in this live stream, I'm going to tell you the truth about absolutely everything. Or at least some things that you might not be aware of that are critically important and are not as well known as you would think. And the reason I'm going to try to illustrate these things in the way that I am is that I think that the real key to liberation, and I'm not just talking about liberation from the matrix, liberation from our overlords, but liberation from our own self-imposed limitations requires us to learn to shine the light where we have been unable to look or unwilling to look. And there are a lot of glaring inconsistencies that can be turned up oftentimes by people on the outside. And I live in the Amazon rainforest, and I lived outside of society my entire life. So I think my vantage point is a little bit different than a lot of folks who are viewing it from the inside. Quite a few things have happened this week. You know, there were the aliens that have turned out to almost definitely be fake. That was kind of obvious. I don't think that they really appeared to be viable creatures that would survive, millions of years of evolution and travel across the stars. They just weren't fit for much of anything. And, there's the possibility that Oprah burned down Hawaii or Maui Maui, right? Oprah and The Rock, because they want to build some sort of smart city and they've invested and the people refuse to sell. And so they're saying they use some sort of direct energy weapon. And most people would probably roll their eyes at that, not probably most of my viewers, but, most of the general population. It turns out that I actually have seen that weapon being used once in Northern California. Another thing that we're going to look at tonight is the fact that a Saudi oil magnate just took over BlackRock. This actually happened a couple months ago. But I recently posted a video from RFK talking about how BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street are really owned by one corporation that owns 89%, I think, of the Standard & Poor 500, the top 500 stock market companies, or companies on, they're the best top 500 on the stock market. 85% of that, they're slated to, at the current rate of acquisition, to own 60% of all of the private family homes in the United States. And so they were taken over by Saudi, which, something that I've mentioned another dozen times or so on this channel is that people have the entire wrong idea about the Illuminati, but we hear a lot about, the Illuminati controls the world and the Rothschilds control the world and Bill Gates controls the world and the Vatican controls the world and all this stuff, but we don't ever hear about the Saudis really. And they don't have to, no one can audit them like the Vatican, right? So people say that Elon Musk is the richest man in the world, but we know for a fact that there are Saudis that pull $1 billion worth of crude out of the ground every single day. There are already trillionaires on this planet, and probably most of them are Saudis. And I just thought it was really interesting that, it has come to light that BlackRock basically, owns the stock market and is buying up all the private land in the United States. Bill Gates is buying up all the farmland, right? So, between the two entities, basically, we kind of do know where the control is, and I'm not saying the Rothschilds, don't have their hands in the pot. Obviously they do. But I just think it's really important for us to look beyond the narratives that we see everywhere, because those are not going to represent the truth. The real truth is going to be concealed. The same is true of spiritual and metaphysical knowledge. The mainstream religions are pretty much entirely garbage. There's little bits of truth sprinkled in them, but they're just so unnecessary and such a diversion from real spiritual growth and development and the acquisition of knowledge, of direct spiritual attainment, as opposed to cheap spiritual bypassing. So we live in a world where the obvious is hidden. And I think that at the current juncture, a lot of these things have no choice but to come out into the light. And, I'm always saying that it's the reason that there's so much effort to restrict people's mobility, to make them fearful, to create dissonance. Because, if you're going to be powerful, you need to have a clear, receptive, to be a hollow tube to bring down fire from heaven. You can't do that if you're full of the interference pattern of dissonance, which is fear and uncertainty, and I think that we're so close to this global awakening that they have had to increase their efforts at misinformation, misdirection, and particularly division. In support of all this, one of the things that I've noticed lately from being a creator, by the way, I've heard that from YouTube today that this is my 4-year birthday on YouTube. I could have sworn it was 5 years, but they're telling me 4 years. So it's kind of bittersweet because this channel used to provide an adequate income for us, but ever since I was demonetized, it's been increasingly difficult. And after the BlackRock post, my views on the shorts algorithm dropped by about 80,000 per week to double digits, down from 100,000 to 80 or 30. So if there's any question about that kind of censorship, and the algorithm definitely hides content that it deems misinformation. And I think that the definition of misinformation is pretty malleable, because I don't ever talk about anything related to the cough. I don't talk about it. I don't spread any hate. All I talk about is psychedelic medicine, critical thinking, and the fact that all religions are traps and both political parties are complete dupes, and everyone involved with them is a trick and a trap. That's all I talk about, really, in a nut, and physics sometimes, and like morphology. So it's pretty crazy. But I'm actually putting together a video where I'm going to show that, I have videos with 300% watch time and 50% likes that go nowhere. And there's no reason. You can't explain that except for shadow ban. And again, it's not just about me and, supporting me, which you should. By the way, I want to real quick, speaking of people that support Illuminostic, we have new patrons. William Evans, I want to thank you for joining our list of patrons. Javier Hetty, and Woo Woo. So if you aren't a patron, you should become a patron. I can guarantee you that the kind of information about alchemy and Freemasonry and the Western occult tradition, you'll not find it anywhere else on the internet. It's not there. I've looked everywhere. I'm not saying there's no good content out there, but I haven't seen anything that has the kind of depth or the specific insights that you'll find in our secret streams. And I also noticed the other day that there are 268 posts in my Patreon. So it's like a whole new channel full of stuff. And I'm also going to start doing extra FaceTime, free FaceTime for people on the $10 tier and up. So we're adding perks all the time. And yeah, but I have become suspicious lately also that they have integrated AI into the algorithms, and that they've unified TikTok with YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, because somehow I got shadow banned on YouTube Shorts algorithm and TikTok on the same day. My TikTok is even more obvious. I have 57,000 followers and 23 million views, and it dropped to single-digit notifications in a single day, down from 5,000 a day. Like, I wake up, I'd have 5,400 notifications on TikTok every single day. I posted about BlackRock, and it dropped to five from 5,000. That doesn't just happen, right? So then the big question becomes, why is a Chinese algorithm have shared interests with American algorithm? And you could say, well, TikTok is basically a Chinese weapon to make the people in the United States completely brain dead, if possible. And they actually put, not good scientific studies and kids winning science fairs and all of this like really smart content on the Chinese algorithm. And then it's nothing but dumb fuckery on the United States version of TikTok. So maybe there's that, but it really blew my mind when I woke up and I looked at my YouTube Shorts and I'm like, wait, what? 20 views on my last 4 videos ever since the Black 20? Like, what the fuck, And then I look at TikTok at 5 notifications. What the hell? Same time. It happened at the same time. So, yeah, we really, one of the reasons that I wanted to come on tonight and do this live stream is that I really want to encourage people to start digging deeper. And really, I'm trying to find avenues for us to connect in more meaningful ways. Join my Discord. You'll find like-minded people there. I'm seriously trying to, or I'm considering trying to create an actual community. I'm really hesitant to do that because what always happens is somebody becomes a cult leader, some alpha male decides that they have all the right ideas and they become too ideological and they steer the community in some weird ass direction. And I'm not trying to deal with that. I know that I'm not predisposed to abuse of power and trying to become a cult leader or whatever, because that has been on the table for me, in the past plenty, and I'm just not interested in that at all. So I know that I don't represent that kind of potential influence, but it is, generally a problem with intentional communities that they just always end up getting hijacked. So if I can find the right people and find good avenues into, just having some security that we're not going to allow that kind of influence to manifest. But the thing is, I don't think we really have a choice at this point. Trying to battle Babylon on the grand scale is not really within our means. There's too much power. They have too much ability to control the information. It's not really feasible for us to meet them on their own playing field. I'm willing to bet there are a lot more creators that are really similar to me, and I just can't find them. Hello, Bob. Because we're shadow banned. We're buried. The only one I can find that talks about a lot of the same stuff that I do that's actually big is Academy of Ideas. It's, solid content for sure. But he gets millions of views in a couple of days. And it is similar in the sense that he is telling people that they're being brainwashed and indoctrinated and spelling the whole thing out for them. But it also tells me I have very little competition in that department. So it seems strange to me that I might get like 100 views. And it's almost identical to this video that, this one other channel gets millions of views in a couple of days. Maybe I'm just doing something terribly wrong, but it does seem a bit odd. And I have trouble believing there's so few of us, It just doesn't stand to reason. I think it's much more likely that it's just become very difficult for us to find each other. And that is a deliberately engineered circumstance. I also want to put out there that we might even be looking for partners, or maybe even a high interest loan or something, because we had this plan that was based on the fact that I did not accept a government handout when it happened. And I wasn't in a hurry to get my son a social security number because I don't see any reason to, you know, I like list him as a corporation with the United States government or whatever. Just, and so a little while back, I discovered that actually the child tax credit would be worth about $10,000 to us now. So we thought that we could file because you have until April of 2024. And it actually turns out that since my son didn't have a social security number, he just doesn't exist, and we're actually not eligible for a penny of that $10,000, which is particularly cute because we lost, two of the main businesses that allowed us to live in Ecuador to COVID. So they destroyed our livelihood, and then they're not going to compensate us for the decisions that they made, which is pretty obnoxious. To put it mildly. So we're looking for alternatives, and I just signed on a property that I will be able to have on the market by the end of the month, but that's not quite fast enough. We want to be out of here within 2 or 3 months, and we're trying to go to Ayampe, and the overhead to secure this property is a lot higher than it is here in the jungle. So if there's anybody out there that might be interested in working with us, shoot me an email so we can talk about the details of that. We could do some kind of percentage on future retreats, or we can just do a percentage contingent upon the sale of this house, or whatever. We can work something out. I'm not talking about a ton of money, but then also we're extending the retreats until definitely November, possibly December, because we have to now. Yeah, that was a hell of a blow. When you're expecting 10K and then all of a sudden find out that it's not happening, man. That was quite a doozy. But life goes on, doesn't it? All right. So we talked about the Saudis. That was just such a mind blower. I had just posted about BlackRock basically owning everything, and I have been mentioning, intermittently that the Saudis are trillionaires and they're really the ones in charge, and yet they're invisible. No one says anything about them. We don't hear anything about them. No one's worried about them. Can you imagine a world that was overtly run by Saudi royalty? I mean, do you have any idea what that... Wait a minute. You do live in that world. Well, look at that shit. Your freedoms are disappearing, and, doesn't it seem... kind of like they actually do already run the world, and they're just kind of coming out of the closet and saying, hey, we actually own BlackRock, which owns everything. And there's another sort of incidental, almost as if I had an intuition. This week earlier, I pissed some people off by posting that, it just sounded ridiculous to me when people complain like they're going to make us eat bugs, which probably isn't true. Nobody's going to force you to do anything. But as a person that lives in the rainforest and is literally watching it get bulldozed, and to the extent that, there'll be indigenous people in their homes, and the Chinese mines will show up and they will tell them, you have 3 hours to move your entire village, or we're going to plow through it with the people in it. And on a couple of occasions, the Shuar actually stayed there anyways. And people told me that, because they build the houses on stilts a lot of times here to keep snakes out of the house, and because, jungle floods. And so they're throwing the kids down out of the second story window because the bulldozers are crushing. They really actually do it. So in one case, they bulldozed this community, and the Shuar came back with spears, and the Chinese shot them. So they went into the jungle and they found some narcos drug traffickers, cartel, and they acquired a bunch of machine guns from these guys, and they came back and they managed to hit one of the Chinese guys, the guard or whatever, the soldier, in the head and kill him. And so the Ecuadorian government teamed up with the Chinese, and they went and hunted this group of Shuar down for defending their village from these people. But I see the rainforest getting destroyed for cattle grazing, and personally, I don't feel like anyone should be forced to do anything, but we have to pay for the sins of our fathers. That's just how it is. You know what I mean? If you care about your grandchildren and your grandchildren's grandchildren, you need to eat organic, because the pesticides are killing all of the insects down here. I can go outside right now with a flashlight and my phone and show you guys, like, nothing comes. I'm in the Amazon rainforest with a light, right? I mean, I have a short you can go find where I open the door, there's lights and there's no bugs. They're all fucking dead, And then what happens? The birds start dying off. Right. And I mean, you guys know, it's a whole chain reaction of shit just going down. So the cattle, are one of the main depleters of rainforest. And so, people eating some cricket burgers, like, that's going to help. You know what I mean? I forget about global warming, but the Amazon rainforest is fucking disappearing. And a lot of it is for cattle. And personally, I eat bugs all the time, and they're good. Chantakurus are better than shrimp. So what are you whining about? You're just, your culture doesn't eat bugs, but 80% of the rest of the world does. So at any rate, I was saying something about this to people, like, you guys, literally, some of you eat McDonald's, which a guy actually took McDonald's to court in the United States and sued them because he could prove that their food additives were so toxic that it was not fit for human consumption, right? And he won. The court ruled in his favor. They did not stop McDonald's from continuing to manufacture poisonous food, but he won. They said it actually is not fit for human consumption. It's the same shareholders that own Big Pharma. They want you to eat that crap so that you're sick, and then they double down on profits because you eat the fast food, and then you have cancer and diabetes and God knows whatever else, and you end up on all kinds of prescription medication because you don't feel well, of course. It's super stupid to be scarfing down. There's petroleum products in the fucking French fries. Their food grade styrofoam is one of the ingredients in the buns and in the papas fritas. What do you call them? French fries. You know what I mean? You're scarfing these things down. I'm not going to eat bugs, and they're literally, you're eating. You know who supplies McDonald's with all of their vegetables? Bill Gates. To watch the same people that believe Bill Gates is trying to kill them and everyone like them, angrily protest that they're not going to eat bugs while they're scarfing down shit that's literally made by someone that's trying to kill them. It's so goddamn stupid. It's unbearable. It really is. It's unbearable to witness the utter dumbfuckery that is almost every narrative in the United States. It is like some kind of demonic circus from hell. It is just insane beyond words to witness this shit. You know what I mean? And I got like one of my patrons deleted because I was saying this, that bugs are actually full of protein, super clean. Like if you eat shrimp from the Gulf of Mexico, they're full of toxins and, they're probably not really even fit for human consumption. But chantakurus, the big coconut grubs, they live their entire life cycle in a palm tree. They're totally clean. They're just shrimp that aren't in water. Who cares? So if you can avert a bunch of destruction by eating bugs because, the boomers were too brain dead and selfish to actually do anything to stop these assholes from plundering everything on the earth, So what? We have to eat some crickets. I mean, it's not that bad, you know. Look at what you're already eating. I mean, if you are eating McDonald's, cricket semen soup is going to be a serious upgrade from, you know, a Big Mac and a Coca-Cola. There's nothing worse. Like, it's literally made by Bill Gates. You know, that's what really blows my mind, because most of the people that are mad about the bugs, saying they're going to make us eat bugs, there's no evidence anyone's going to force you to eat bugs either. None at all. Just, you know, people saying like we could farm them super cheap and we wouldn't have to cut the rainforest down to produce meat. And, you know, of course, some people are talking about the ozone and global warming. And I know how much of a, you know, hot button topic that is. I try to just not say anything about it because I don't know. I don't care, really. You know, my interest is here in the rainforest. And but they're all right wingers that don't want to eat the bugs, and they're all terrified that Bill Gates is trying to kill them. But then they're like defending their right to like eat food that he makes to kill them. You know, we've got to be smarter than this. It's just, it is. It's made by Bill Gates. You know, and I almost regret that I didn't get into spirituality earlier in this live stream. I just kind of want to touch on everything, but you know, people talk about waking up. You got to wake all the way up, not just part of the way up. You can't just abandon one bullshit narrative and then adopt another. That's not waking up. That's just switching sides from one pack of lies to another pack of lies. You know, I mean, Republican, Democrat is the difference between elephant shit and donkey shit. That's it. It's a different pile of shit. You know, grow some mushrooms in it. Use it for something. Extract some truth from it. Yeah, I mean, dude, chantakurus are good, you know. Bugs are not necessarily gross, even. I mean, and the thing is, like, people in the United States, they're like, oh, they're going to make us eat bugs. It's like, well, so what? 80% of the world eats bugs. You know, the United States is pretty much the only place where people don't eat bugs. And if you include the Native Americans, that, you know, all indigenous peoples all around the world eat grubs. And if you cook them solid, it's not like they're full of mushy bug guts. It's just a little chunk of protein that tastes kind of like shrimp. I mean, it's not anything to complain about. You know, it's ridiculous. There are ants in my kitchen right now. They come up out of the ground every so often, and they fly, and they're huge, and they look kind of like wasps, but they're not. And they're kind of furry. That's the only thing that's weird. But they're really good. Like, I was walking down the road with some Warani kids, about a year ago, I guess. And they were showing us all these plants, man. It was crazy how much food there is in the jungle. You know, I mean, I knew there was a lot of food in the jungle, but I had no idea until I actually went walking around with these Warani kids how many weird things there are everywhere. I mean, they were stripping these kind of like large grasses apart, and they tasted like lemon candy or something, and, you know, making toys out of these little seed pods. It was just nuts, man. And we're walking along, and all of a sudden the kids get all excited, and they're like, beret, beret, beret. I was like, what, beret? And I looked down, and there's all these gigantic ants crawling. I mean, huge. And I guess they were at the end of their life cycle, so they couldn't fly anymore. And then they're just crawling around the ground dying. And they started running around, eating them up like popcorn. And at first I was like, oh, man, you know, I've eaten chantakuru, but I don't know about some giant living ant had pinchers, you know. And I asked one of the kids, like, those pinchers look pretty big, and the kid put his fingers in the pinchers, and it couldn't really do anything, so didn't have to worry about my tongue. And I ate one, and it was kind of like almonds, you know, like squishy almonds, but kind of sweet and nutty, and definitely not bad at all. But that's not the point here, man. You know, if you find yourself screaming about, you know, not wanting to eat bugs while you're cramming a bunch of shit Bill Gates made down your gullet, I mean, you know, like, just please hurry up and exit the gene pool. Like, that's just people just don't even know, you know. They're just repeating whatever narrative they think their demographic is supposed to repeat. Let's not be those people. That's what I'm saying to you guys, you know. You have to learn to see things from every possible perspective and objectively evaluate them. You know, That's, if I have any particular skill to a large degree, that's what it is. Yeah, no, Grandis Utu, of course, is that what it says? Yeah, of course, I'm not saying that anyone should be forced to take any kind of particular lifestyle, but there's no way you can say that shoveling a bunch of stuff in your face that you know is manufactured by somebody that wants to kill you, wants you to die at least, while you're refusing some other diet because, you know what I mean? It's too stupid. It's too stupid. It's not about trying to force anybody's lifestyle. I will try to force intelligence on people as much as I possibly can. You have to be able to think. And so, comparing different perspectives objectively is an excellent exercise for anyone to acquire. I got it from Aleister Crowley because he was talking about in his books that one of the best ways to establish the kind of omniscience that real enlightenment is, right? People have all kinds of like woo-based ideas about what enlightenment is. It's like this, totally neutral, blissful, almost like a psychedelic state or something. But it's something other than our immediate awareness. And I don't think that's true. I think it is just our immediate awareness. It is illumination, let's call it, instead of enlightenment, right? Let's just call it illumination. It's the ability to see the universe as it actually is without projecting anything onto it, And one of the best exercises to get to the place where you're capable of that is to meet every idea with its opposite. And this is basically alchemical thinking, You combine two opposite things, and from them a third thing emerges of a higher nature. That's the alchemical process of transmutation of ideas. And mental transmutation is really the most powerful kind. And, one of the things the alchemists taught is that the physical transmutation cannot occur in the absence of the ability to do the mental transmutation. And if you want to take that as just an allegorical teaching, by the way, if you join my Patreon and you watch the secret streams on alchemy, you will see I established beyond a shadow of a doubt. Oh, okay. Almost beyond a shadow of a doubt, because the reality is, unless you see it happen in front of you, I guess there's still a shadow of doubt. But at least that they obviously knew that Mercury was one proton away from being gold, and that it took electromagnetic energy to knock a proton off and make Mercury into gold. That much is definitely in 200-year-old books, at least 200-year-old books. But yeah, so the process of alchemical transmutation, and this is what I'm always saying about plant medicine and spirituality and spiritual bypassing. People want an easy route. They want a simple answer. They want to be intellectually lazy. They don't want to take responsibility for stuff. They don't want to wait. They want immediate gratification. They don't want to have to put in a bunch of tedious work and learn a bunch of stuff and, sit around for years and also have to learn science and mathematics and all this stuff. And all of that, in my opinion, is actually essential to, any real kind of illumination, right? But the reality is, if you don't go through these processes to develop objectivity, to develop emotional and psychological homeostasis, right? Self-knowledge, before you start to acquire wealth, before you transmute lead into gold, right? You will just destroy whatever you create. So whether it's allegory or literal truth is almost irrelevant, because it's true, period. That's the thing about universal truths, right? You will know that you have discovered one because every single system that you observe will be subject to them, and they will never fail to apply, right? Like all is transient is a great one. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about a person or a civilization or a star or the universe, right? What goes up comes down. And then there's another great one that people miss a lot, which is that there's an exception to every rule, right? So if you run at a wall a billion times, eventually you will happen to run into it at the same moment that all of your atoms or electrons, whatever, all of your particles that make up your body are in the right place in their spin process, and so is the wall, or just the wall is, and you'll go right through it, right? They say that. Or if you do an experiment in a particle acceleration chamber 1 billion times, which is possible because these things happen in a tiny, tiny fraction of a second. That's why they can repeat the experiment so many times. Every once in a while, you'll get a different answer, right? It might be the same 1 billion times, but then there's this one time where there's a variation. So there's an exception to every rule. And we're getting a little bit off topic here, but I'm just trying to show how these, metaphysical truths that you find in alchemy and hermeticism and whatnot actually can be unfolded into a tremendous amount of knowledge in every different arena of your life and experience when properly understood and applied. Well, it's not just that mercury can be used to absorb gold. It doesn't really absorb it. I don't know that that's really the way to talk about that, but this is another interesting sort of allegory that relates to that. There's a couple levels to it. So the sun is the symbol of gold, and all the gold on Earth or anywhere else was created in nuclear fission of stars. So all gold came from stars in the first place. Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. And Hermes, or Mercury, is the mediator between the universal mind and the earth, right? So, there's that Mercury is right next to the sun. Mercury, knock a proton off, it becomes gold. So all that is metaphor. And those kind of things, because they were not done deliberately, to me at least, are evidence that there is some kind of subconscious connection to the information in the universe, on some level that's not obvious. You know what I mean? The allegorical stuff that lies behind the deeper meanings, the wiring under the board, we actually do know it. That's why, as Terence McKenna said, if the truth can be told so as to be understood, it will be believed. When people talk about things resonating, it's because we have all this information in us, because the universe is actually holographic in nature, and so all of it contains all the information of all the parts. And so it's all everywhere. Anything that's anywhere is everywhere, and nowhere too, because everything contains this contradiction, and nothing is everything. If you just zoom into this table here and you just keep going with an electron microscope, the more you zoom in, the less there is until there's absolutely nothing. The foundation of everything is literally nothing. But that's not what I was going to say. I was talking before about gold as the symbol of consciousness. It doesn't corrode, right? Our consciousness comes from light, and gold is the color of sunlight. So there's all this symbolism. I think there's probably something deeper going on there. But Mercury is the mediator between the divine knowledge and us, right? So there's the source, and there's the mediator, and then there's us working through the mediator. So if you think of Mercury in the Hermetic sense as Hermes Thoth, the Promethean channel that brings this knowledge to mankind, gold is the symbol of consciousness, Mercury as the mediator. When you take raw material and you want to purify it and get the gold out, when you're extracting, like the indigenous here will pound up rock, and then it has impurities and gold, and so they'll put mercury on it and then burn the mercury away, and the only thing that's left is the gold. So in the same way, this mercury, the allegorical mercury, burns away all of the dross from our consciousness and awareness and knowledge and leaves the gold of higher consciousness and truth. So, there is no way that anyone deliberately planned all that. It's just that there is some deeper element in our consciousness that does know. And there's absolutely no question that the ancients understood these allegories and the substance's physical capabilities. You know, there's a lot of weird parallels that just cannot be explained. For example, the Aztecs, not the main Aztec, the Nahuatl, the tribe that my son's name, Nagual, is taken from, their rulers, the chieftains, were buried in sarcophagus that were surrounded by a moat of mercury. Yeah, Taryn, that's another thing about gold and consciousness. Consciousness is, you know, the electromagnetic field, where our brains are loaded with magnetite. And so it's my opinion and opinions of, you know, some of the best scientific minds on earth right now, like Michael Levin, that we're basically a receptor for that electromagnetic field. And so one of the reasons Orsmus or colloidal gold is so good for you, other than the fact that it improves your mood, I think that it improves conductivity in the brain and makes your antenna work like greased lightning. So very, very smart, I think, to consume colloidal gold. Colloidal silver is also good, apparently, but nothing beats colloidal gold. In fact, I don't really have access down here, but anyone that comes to my retreats, I strongly advise to take Orsmus or colloidal gold as much as you can before you attend, so that your brain is primed for maximum receptivity. But yeah, what we were talking about there with the gold as a conductor of electricity, I think that plays into the usefulness of colloidal gold in the brain biologically. I'm not sure what you're saying about gold and mercury being very chemically similar. There are no chemicals. They are one proton away from being the same thing. So in a laboratory, if you knock a proton off of mercury, you can make gold. They've done this. And in the old alchemical treatises, they talk about how, you know, you can't make something out of nothing. So if you want a chicken and you want to make more chickens, you have to start with chickens. So the recipe is basically a small amount of gold, mercury, and lead, and the impetus for the transformation is some sort of mystical change in the mind of the alchemist that allows for an interaction with matter and consciousness and an electromagnetic charge. And, you know, they didn't talk about it in the old alchemical treatises as knocking a proton off of mercury, but it's obviously what they're describing in this old process. So, that's, you know, basically that. And so this was all a very long-winded and circuitous, is how you say that word, meandering way of trying to elucidate the fact that other than our political system, right? I'm trying to get back in touch with my title, right? Politics and spirituality. You know, the two single most destructive influences in our world are political entities in all of the different permutations that they can exist in, and religion. And we can negate the political entities or the need for them with conscious evolution. That is the only possible thing. People are always trying to come up with some new system, saying, well, if we just were communist, or if we were just socialist, or if we could just mediate capitalism with something else. Here's the truth, guys. I told you I would tell you the truth about everything. I'm going to tell you the truth right now. No system will work. There will be no improvements at all unless the consciousness of the culture and its leaders are changed. It doesn't matter what ism that you put at the top and, attach strings to its fingers. It doesn't matter whose all-seeing eye is at the capstone of the fucking pyramid. Until there is collective gnosis, until people are liberated from the sociological constructs of the ism-schism game and the traps that have been prepared for them by the religious systems, whose real function is to encourage people to supplant spiritual growth with spiritual bypassing, right? You don't need to do the work. Just put your faith in Jesus and your sins are forgiven, right? That's the most over-the-top example of spiritual bypassing ever. And you might be surprised to hear that it doesn't work. It doesn't work, And what I've been describing throughout the last few minutes of this light stream is the fact that there is a way to connect your individual consciousness with the universal mind and to have direct experience of the transcendental that is confirmable. You can confirm this stuff, You see that you have, had some insight into the nature of Mercury and the sun, and then you realize that these ancients knew this stuff, and you can see the metaphors and the allegories, and they are elucidated by modern science. And then you can put it all together and you realize that you have something akin to, transcendental knowledge. It is transcendental knowledge. It is not certainty. It is not faith. It is certainty. You actually know stuff. And what happens is through various methods, whether you're talking about plant medicine or sex magic or meditations of different kinds, you are turning off or down the filtration system in your nervous system, and you are connecting to the electromagnetic field, and that's how you're getting information. And there's no longer any question about this, right? Michael Levin's experiments have absolutely proved this, that organisms are informed, the cells know what to do, right? Because of electromagnetic signals from the field, not from their DNA. Right? It's also genetics. It's not like that isn't correct. But the experiment that I'm addressing specifically, they were able to use electromagnetic signals to influence these worms to grow two heads. And without changing the genome, all of the antecedent, all of the ancestors, the progeny of those worms had two heads without changing the genome, right? They also made changes in the organism that were electromagnetic impulses, but they were chemical in nature. So the introduction of barium simulated through an electromagnetic charge. There was no genetic history of interaction between the organism and these things, and yet the adaptations would occur. And so, we have all sorts of marvelous implications of this in terms of our connection to some sort of field of information. And then if you take certain elements into consideration, like the fact that quantum physics tells us that no information is ever lost. Well, if the energy is retaining all of the information, then that means that somewhere in the field, all of that information still exists and is still accessible. We also are very suspicious that time is not actually linear in quantum physics. There's lots of things that are nearly definitive when it comes to that implication, right? So, we can have an experience-based spiritual life. We can experience the transcendental and extract actual meaningful knowledge from it, And instead of misusing ayahuasca and trying to find out what your past lives are, and I'm not saying you can't ever do that, but trying to find out what your past lives are, and trying to read the future, and all these other kind of wooey things that people are doing with plant medicine, you need to use it to look at yourself first and get rid of all the dissonance patterns so that your reception to that field is wide open. Then you can worry about who you were in a past life and what's going to happen in the future. But you need to turn on that third eye and focus it on the here and now, which is something that I think a lot of people evade. A lot of spiritual bypassing going on out there in the world. It's, it's a scary time right now. It's full of uncertainty, and people want to create fantasies to escape to. And it's really alarming and sad for me to see so much potential getting lost in the void, because of the profit motive, I mean, I do retreats more or less for a living, but it's not how I behave, and the things that I say and do are not determined by the bottom line. It's actually not that difficult of a balancing act unless you're very, very greedy. That's the sad truth of it. It's very, very confusing for me to watch all the theatrics, all of the shenanigans, I guess would be a better word. What's going on, Big C? By the way, speaking of retreats, I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but we are extending because I was like, you know what, I don't want a government handout, and then I decided it's $10,000, we need it, and then we can go to a Yampe where it's much more expensive and still actually survive and get our business going again. Government said nope, fuck you guys. So now our alternative is that we have to stay here and continue. I mean, it's not like it's a bad thing. We don't mind being in the jungle and doing retreats, but at any rate, if September was too soon for you, you have the opportunity of coming in November and December. And we're also maybe looking for a partner. So in case the audience has turned over since I began, I just wanted to mention that again, because we're kind of scrambling to figure out how to deal with the new dynamics. And then also, you guys join our Patreon. We have quite a few new members in September. But since I'm demonetized, that is how I keep the channel going. And I think this channel is a source of unique information. So if you appreciate that, then we appreciate your support. And with that, I promised them that I was going to watch a movie, I think a little bit with them before. Right on, man. With the Colombian shaman in New York. That's awesome. I'm assuming it probably went well. You seem happy about it. But yeah, you guys, please do support the channel. Hit the like button, share, and subscribe. Share the videos with people, because YouTube, my numbers tell me that my views, 2.3% come from YouTube recommending my content, which means that almost all the rest of it is from people sharing, I guess. I see a lot of it comes from right on, man, comes from Discord, from different Discords. So I appreciate all you guys that are out there doing that. And I hope everyone has a great time, and some of you can make it to the retreat in September or November, even possibly December now. And if not, you can join us out in the Yampe, because we're going to be doing something similar out there, although I think I'm going to focus more on psilocybin and San Pedro out there on the coast, because those things exist there, and it just seems appropriate to use whatever's around us for our retreats. And then we're also going to integrate surfing and more like guided outdoor activities, like going out to the islands where the penguins and the manta rays are, doing some snorkeling, and also going to the jaguar reserve that is about 50 kilometers up the coast. And then there are jungle hiking trails and stuff. So either way, it's going to be great. I hope to meet as many of you as possible. Definitely in the 4 years that I've had this channel, I've made a lot of friends, and a lot of those relationships have lasted almost as long as the channel has existed, which is pretty remarkable. So yeah, thank you guys, and I'll see you again soon.